Following the game last night with Fernando Tatis, he went this morning, got an MRI, and was examined by Dr. Robertson and Dr. Leak over at UCSD. I think overall, like, pretty positive report in general from looking at the imaging. Rotator cuff, bone structure, muscle structure look good. There's some slight labral tearing, which is consistent with really anytime you have a subluxation and you have a shoulder that's dislocated. And I think from his situation, it seems like last night the shoulder popped in and out of place. Overall the exam today was pretty uneventful. He's in good spirits, has good range of motion, really doesn't have any real inflammation overall in that area. We are going to go ahead and put him on the disabled list, make a roster move today. I think, in general for us, I think it's just being safe and, giving the left shoulder inflammation and some of the instability a chance to calm down and, put him in a good spot here, use the 10 days to continue working with him and, again, like put him in a good spot to continue for the season. But, ultimately it's our medical team and Fernando agreed non-surgical, go the route of, some rest with some exercises that he can do to help that area, help strengthen that area, and hopefully look up in 10 days. And, at that point in time, look for him to get back on the field and play. So that's, overall, that's, I think, a pretty positive report. I think, most importantly, he's feeling good today. He wants to be in the lineup, but I think, from our standpoint, putting him on the DL, we felt like was the right move, both short and long term, and kind of see, let's use the next 10 days to put him in a better spot and go from there with it. So, yeah, I think we'll see. I mean, I think with all these injuries, we'll see how he responds over the course of the next week or so. But honestly, I wouldn't rule anything out. I think this takes him out for the road trip. I think we saw in spring training, I think the last time he had one of these episodes, he was back in a day or two and, wanted to be in the lineup. I think, I think from this standpoint, we'll evaluate here as we go in the next few days. But, I don't think we're ruling anything out as far as him being able to come back and play when he's off the DL in 10 days. We talked about that a lot, obviously. I think, again, I think, them having history with Fernando, I think, obviously being able to do an exam in person, put their hands on him, see how things respond, and then look at the imaging. They clearly felt that this is not something that we feel like long term we're putting him at risk if he goes out there and continues playing this season. Again, I think there's always the chance that he can have another episode, another incident where there's another subluxation, and at that point in time we'll have to we'll evaluate from there. But this is not a situation where our doctors, knowing the player, seeing him and examining him, look at the images, feel like that we're putting him in an issue to have any kind of long-term more damage or anything like that if he goes out there and plays. I think if he continues to have issues and this becomes something that's a regular part of it, and we do decide, hey, surgery is the answer, I think surgery is going to go out and fix it according to our medical team. We're not putting him in more risk by putting him out there over the course of the next few months and hopefully the rest of the season. And the good news with Fernando, he's got full range of motion this morning. He feels good. He examined really well. He doesn't have a ton of limitations, and now now I think it's putting everybody's head together to try to make sure he's not in that same spot here, in 10 days or when he does come back over the course of the next month. Yeah, I mean, I think. Like Fernando's he's a loose-bodied athlete, so I think really over the course of the last few seasons, this was not something that we dealt with like regularly. Last season, honestly, he's got some different strengthening programs that he's on. Like everybody's got some individual programs that they're on due to their body types or structures. This was not anything last season that he was having any issues with his shoulder. Didn't have any issue with a shoulder subluxing or dislocating. He didn't have that last year at all. I think spring training this year was I think the game where he tagged up on the ball, slid into third first, head first into third base, and then tagged up and slid head first into home. Kind of hit home plate hard when he tagged up on the Machado pop up to shortstop. That was the first time I think he left that ball game after the at bat, and his next AB. That was the first time that I think it was bothering him at that point, and then obviously the ground ball to him at shortstop when he left that ball game. So this has really been something more in the last few months, or the last really few weeks in the last month, that we've had to deal with, to this degree. And obviously last night having to leave the game. So I think it's been something that continues to to catch up to him, and hopefully we put it behind us here over the course of the next few months. On the signing physical, when we did when we signed him to the contract, and he did obviously had a physical, MRIs, everything like that. I think really at that point in time, it was pretty consistent with what we saw here today. But overall, I think it was just more of a feeling like, hey, this could be something down the road, years down the road. And I think really the expectation, the hope was that, a strengthening program in general, whether it was, years down the road, months down the road, and then last resort would be, potentially a surgery type situation. I think that was, those were things that, at the end of the day, we really didn't, I think we did our homework obviously on it, but, this was not anything that was, part of what we did daily over the course of the last, few years. I think, maybe at a different point in his minor league career and progression, I think it was, hey, he's got some, some shoulder laxity, and I think a strengthening program is part of what he does. Similar to when he had the stress reaction in the back the first year, where it was like, hey, he got on a back program to strengthen that area, and that he stayed religious with as well on that front. So again, this was not something that we've dealt with daily as a medical group in terms of being an incident. It's just more of, hey, these are, this is kind of his body type, and let's make sure he's on a good strengthening or maintenance program for a couple of these issues. And honestly, it's up until about a month ago, it wasn't something that we really had to put a ton of stock into on a day-to-day basis. And what he describes, it doesn't seem like he's in pain really outside of the incident when it happens. And I know the one in spring training when he picked up the ground ball was a little bit more like an aggravation, a pinching is what he described. And then I think he reacted to that, walked off the field. It was spring training. I think he was professional in what he did. And then he talked about really kind of like minutes after that, and definitely like the bottom half of that inning, he was saying, if this is a regular season game, I'm not coming out. Now last night was it looked different. He felt a little bit different. I think it was it was more what he described, more moderate pain. What he was feeling, but obviously it was enough to he wasn't staying in that ball game last night. He walked off the field. When he left the stadium last night, he seemed to be in pretty good spirits. When he woke up this morning, probably more importantly, and here today, he's looking to play. So I think from that standpoint, it seemingly is something, and you'll have to talk to him, but it's seemingly something where it's more in the moment that he's feeling it, and it's not something that he's days later, weeks later, that he's it's a day-to-day thing where he's feeling that pain a week later. It's kind of like in the moment he feels it, next day he seems to be in a good spot. And that seems to be pretty consistent with what we're hearing from a lot of guys that have gone through it and had similar issues. We'll see here during the year. I mean, I've talking to different people, talking to our doctors. I think there's situations where players, really have not had to have a surgery, and depending on how severe the labral tearing is, depending on what else is going on in that shoulder, depending on how often and what that instability looks like, how often it's popping in and out of place. So I think, again, like talking to our doctors, the expectation is that we're able to address it right now without having to go to the surgery route. And then I think there's players that'll get through a season, and then the off season they'll have a surgery because they don't want to have to go through that maintenance, that regular maintenance every single day to stay on the field. There's other guys that have had to do it right away because of the severity of what they've got going on. So, I think from our standpoint, it's kind of a wait and see in terms of, is it inevitable? I think, I didn't get that from our doctors today when I asked them that question. I didn't get that, hey, this is just not just a matter of, of when. It's like, hey, let's see where this goes. And, it may not be something that he needs to have surgery for. I think I think the hope as we get through the year, and the feeling as we get through the season, and then we re-examine, as we go into the off season and make a decision at that point about where things stand.